So how much do African safaris cost? An African safari averagely costs around $3,000, and that will give you about 10 days of an African safari experience. Now, the beauty of that is that with 10 days, you will have sufficient time to be able to visit all those national parks and maybe spend some time at the beach. So let's delve into what constitutes that 3,000 and the things that affect the different price points that you'd expect to have. So let me first begin by saying that an African safari is affected by a lot of things, and the cost will vary based on a lot of factors. Part of those factors will be like which accommodation you use and so on, and I'm going to get into that in detail. And at the end of this video, we're going to talk about whether an African safari that is very high-end, the luxury ones that cost like $10,000, whether those are actually worth it, and also discuss whether a budget safari that is around $1,000, whether that's worth it and whether you should do it or not. So let's first begin with who am I? My name is Anthony and I live in Kenya. Kenya is one of the most popular tourist destinations for African safaris, and I have gone to a number of these national parks and interacted with the safari environment for me to be able to know a lot of this data. At the same time, as I'm giving you this data, part of it is from research that I have done, and I'm going to be quoting some of the sources in the description below, so you can go and check those out for yourself. So let's first ask ourselves the question, what affects how much a safari costs? And there are a number of factors around that. How long you stay on an African safari, that you probably already knew that will definitely affect how much it costs. So if you're going to spend a very short time, the cost of your safari is going to be lower than if you spent a longer time. The thing about it though is that the longer time you spend, the less your cost per day. This is because there are some costs that are already in, whether you spend 1 day or 5 days. For instance, the cost of getting you to that national park, if you're going to just spend 1 day or many days, is still going to be the same. And so you'll generally find that the cost per day of a safari becomes cheaper the longer you stay, and so there's a certain minimum that you'd expect to spend. Now, the other thing that affects safaris other than the length that you're going to stay is what kind of amenities you're going to be having. Amenities in the hotel that you're going to be in, amenities in other places like the type of transport you're going to be using, amenities in the sense of like what kind of things will be available to you in the hotels. So let's talk about that a bit. So basically, when you arrive in Africa for your safari, usually the cost of getting you from the airport to your safari destination or to your hotel then to your safari destination usually would be covered by you if you're on a budget tour. It's called airport transfers. Many of the Kenyan safaris usually start off from Nairobi, and they will start from Nairobi to the national park, taking you all over those places and taking you back to Nairobi. Meaning that the cost of getting from Nairobi to the airport, and it's not very far, but that connection from your hotel to the airport is something that is not usually covered when you're doing a budget tour. However, if it's a more expensive safari, they usually include it in there. They will pick you from the airport, take you to your destination, to your safari destination, come back, and take you back to the airport. The other thing about it is your accommodation in between your stay. So let's say you arrive in Nairobi on a Thursday and your tour is supposed to start on something like a Saturday. That time in between there, you'll have to cater for your own accommodation. So figure out where you're going to stay within that time before your tour starts. And so in more luxury tours, they usually would take that into consideration, or it can be an add-on package which you might want to add on to your safari. And this is usually available to people who are in more high-end safaris more than the budget ones. If you're going to be flying to your safari destination from Nairobi, so once you arrive in Nairobi, if you're going to fly, for instance, to a place like the Masai Mara, the cost of your safari is going to be higher than if you drove there. Now, something about it, Masai Mara is one of the most popular safari destinations here in Kenya. And so if you're going to fly there, it usually would take about 45 minutes. Now, that's a really good convenience, but it comes at a cost, because if you're going to be flying there, 45 minutes, you'll pay roughly around $200 one way and $200 the other way. So it increases your cost that much. So if it's going to be included in the cost of your safari, definitely they're going to add some margin on there because of organizing those flights for you. However, on the flip side, if you're going to be going to the Masai Mara by road, you'll have to count out one entire day of travel because it's usually roughly around 6 hours to 7 hours from Nairobi to the Masai Mara, and it's a very bumpy ride. So if you don't want that inconvenience, or if you want to spend more time in the national park itself, you may probably want to go in the direction of flying, but that it comes at a cost. The other thing about it though is as you are traveling there, you're going to be in different types of vehicles depending on how much you're paying for your safari. This safari vehicle is really comfortable. It's the Toyota Land Cruiser. It's a standard high-end safari vehicle, and especially if it's newer, it's really comfortable, and you only have just a few of you in that van. And so it usually would cost slightly more than if you went for, now I'm showing you a different picture here, of a different van that accommodates a few more people, and it's not as comfortable as a Toyota Land Cruiser. And so if you're going to be going for the more comfortable vehicle, it's definitely going to cost you a bit more. The kind of tour van driver who also doubles up as your safari guide, the quality of that tour driver is going to be affected by which company you're going with, and the companies that charge a bit more have more experienced, better tour guides who also double up as the drivers, and you'll have a much better experience. Now, I would advise you not to go on the cheap end, especially when in terms of the tour guide, because your tour guide is going to make up the majority of your experience. They will have a lot of local knowledge. They will be like nice to hang around. They'll be able to give you like local tips. They'll be patient with you as you're taking photos and so on. If they're professional and experienced, they know how to go around the Masai Mara or whatever other national park you're going to in any part of Africa, basically. And so that's one of the things that may affect it. So if you're paying a bit more for your tour, you expect to get a better tour guide, and which makes up for a really good experience. When you get to your destination, you will have like different types of accommodation within that national park, and the types of accommodation will be affected by a number of things, and definitely how much you pay for them is one of the biggest factor. So if you're going to be in a budget tented camp, you're definitely going to pay way less, and that's where budget camps usually come to. Budget safaris usually accommodate you in tented camps, and tented camps are no frills kind of accommodation where you're in a tent, and that's basically it. The tent is probably more sheltered than what you would have as a normal pitched tent that you would have when going hiking, but it's a tent all the same, and not exactly very high end. However, on the flip side, there are accommodation types that have like huge, really good amenities like swimming pools, a spa, all of those things, and that's on the very high end. The mid-range, you'd expect to be in a room that has African styling, not exactly very high end per se, but it's not a tent. So it's basically a bit more comfortable accommodation if you're going to be in a mid-tier. The things that are normally included I talked about $3,000, and the things that you'd expect to be included in that kind of safari would be things like park entry fees. That's normally included in there. Things like accommodation, full board, all of the meals during your stay, during the length of your safari. It is going to include some activities. It's set up in such a way that you are not going to spend any more money for that safari once you start your safari. However, there are things that it excludes that you need to be cognizant of. Some of those include things like the cost of your flight from your home country to the safari country. The other thing which is also really excluded from most of this, and actually I believe all of them, would be tips. And you need to think about tips when you come here, because you will be tipping a number of people. You'll be tipping your driver, who doubles up as a tour guide. You will be tipping like hotel staff and so on, and that's going to be your bill. So prepare to come with cash and have cash available. By the way, about cash, just in case you don't know what to do, when you arrive in Nairobi, you can actually withdraw using your normal card from an ATM. It will withdraw and it will give you the money in Kenyan currency, which I think is a really good thing. So the question that would come to your mind at this point would be, is going for high-end safari, the luxury safari, is it worth doing? Is it something that is worth the money? Now, some of these safaris, like you can check out on Safari Booking, I'll add a link in the description below. There's some really high-end safaris that cost something like even $8,000, $10,000. Abercrombie and Kent, I hope I've said that name correctly. They have tours that go for like $10,000 and like really high-end safaris that have like the real custom experience. And so the question would be, is that worth it? And that's $10,000 per person, by the way. Is a safari that high-end worth it? In my opinion, I would say no. If you go for a mid-tier safari, middle of the line safari, it will give you most of the comforts you would expect and be less expensive than the very high end. It will not come with like all the frills of like having your own personal butler helping you along the way. But the thing is, you don't need that. As long as you have a good tour guide, they basically are enough help for you. Now, on the flip side, the other question you may have is, do I go for the complete budget? Let's say I don't have a lot of money to travel and I want to go for this safari. Now, that's a place I would tell you to watch out a bit, because the very budget safaris, especially if you're expecting to be comfortable, then it's not going to work out for you, because the accommodation you're going to be in is not going to be that great. You'll not be able to fly, so you'll have a very bumpy ride going to your destinations and back. You basically will have really very few frills, and so actually it goes like this. You get what you pay for. When you're in Africa, you get what you pay for. So be careful about how much it is you're going to be spending. I would advise that if you don't have enough, just delay your trip for a few months and save up, so that you have at least $3,000 per person for your actual safari, and it is going to be definitely worth it. If you've been to Africa before and you went for your safari, comment below how much yours cost and whether you have any tips on anything that you can do to save. Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Asante sana. That means thank you in Swahili. So if you like this content, a like to the channel would be really appreciated. And if you don't want to miss out on any of the videos that we're going to be doing, just like this, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of the future videos. Until next time, keep traveling.